All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the last chapter, PowerPoints for Murox ASP.NET 4.6 with C# 2015, 6th edition. And we're up to page 868, the shopping cart as an MVC application. And the author mentions here, this chapter will introduce the basic ASP.NET MVC concepts and skills by showing examples from an MVC version of the shopping cart app for the book. To keep things simple, the MVC shopping cart will have limited functionality. For example, the order page has an add to cart button but not a go to cart button, and the cart page displays what's in the cart but it doesn't allow you to actually check out. So what you see on your screen here is what's in figure 25-2 on page 869. It's one page of the shopping cart app, and we will be provided with a summary of the 4 pages that the app illustrates. Now, I want to mention, because the rest of the page on 868 is what's important. This figure gives you a general procedure for creating an MVC app. First, you create the app. Makes sense. Then, you add the model. After your model is in place, you add the controller. After the controller is in place, you create one or more views. So it's important to start and have the data and your business rules in mind. That's the model part. All right. Then you add the controller, because before you can add a view, remember that since the model and the view do not communicate directly with one another, they do it through the controller. You start with a model, but then you go to the controller and then you do the view. You repeat these steps as many times as necessary as you build the application. So you complete the steps of, you do the app once, of course, but you complete the step 2 of the model, step 3 of the controller, step 4 of the view, and you repeat steps 2 through 4 as many times as necessary. Now, the last paragraph is what's golden on the page, and you have to realize this. I'm just going to read it verbatim, the first couple sentences. As you read this chapter, don't worry if you find yourself struggling to follow some of the concepts. Since an ASP.NET MVC application is so different from a web forms application, it takes time to grasp the concepts. All right? So please just remember that as we go on. So these are the 4 pages in the cart application and what they illustrate. The home page, notice, is a simple controller and a simple view. In other words, all the home page is going to do is, for lack of better words, introduce you to the Halloween Superstore company. So to my knowledge, there is no model involved there. All right. The Contact Us page will have a view model and what's called a strongly typed view. The order page will have the controls in a view and the controllers, as it says, that handle both GET requests and POST requests. If you're not familiar with those, a GET request is like a select statement. All right, so a GET can retrieve information but not change information. A POST is more like an insert or an update or a delete, in that, yes, a POST can change information. And finally, we've got our cart, which has our models and our view models and how to work with model binding. So this is what's going to be demonstrated in here. So again, this is the 4-step process. You only do step 1 once. You do steps 2, 3, and 4. Model, controller, view, model, controller, view, model, controller, view. And you do those as many times as necessary as you're building your application. All right. right, so let's not concentrate on this right now. Let's go and take a look at the actual code that's in here. Now, when you come in and you create a model view controller application, we'll talk about that in the next section. But when you do that, notice what you get built for yourself. You've got app data, and app data ends up holding your database. You've got app start, and that holds the information that runs when the program begins. You've got content, and that typically holds your CSS files. You've got controllers, and we already know what controllers are. All right? Again, what do we have in here? Well, we've got several pages, right? And these pages are going to end up having, basically each one of them are going to end up having their own controller. We've got fonts that I believe are glyphicons, yep. We've got whatever images we need. And there's our products. Notice how the author did a good job of putting those into their own folder. And our Muroc Halloween Superstore banner. We've got our models. Notice we've got a cart model, an identity model, and an order model. Cart and order. So we've got controllers. All right. And we've got our views. And you'll notice there's a lot of them. All right. So if we start to look at some of the stuff that's in here, for instance, here's the home controller. It's going to look a little bit different. You are supposed to follow a specific kind of naming construction, such as controllers, which as you can see inherit from the controller class, should always end with the word controller, and at the beginning should have the type of controller they are. So there's the home controller. All right. There's the cart controller. There's the account controller. So I already did that one. The order controller, etc. All right. We've got a directive here that says if we're working with a get or if we're working with a post. Okay. And as we go through this, this might make little to no sense. But hopefully it will make more sense as we start to go through it. All right. So when you come in and you start up a new ASP.NET application, this is what you'll see. It's built, since it's built on ASP.NET, many of the objects we worked with in web forms are also going to be available. But how an MVC application is organized is going to be different. So this figure is designed to show you how you start a new application. So if I came through here and I went in and started up a new session of Visual Studio and I said, File, New, let's do a project here. All right, and when we look in here, what do we have? It says here we're supposed to select the web template group. All right, so we'll use a web application. Okay, let's just call this MVC. All right, and we're going to click OK. Now, what you see here is similar to what you see on the screen in Figure 25.3. So we can choose empty here, which will give us an empty project, web forms, which is kind of what we have been doing, but the one we're concerned with here is MVC. So this chapter discusses MVC 5, but MVC 6 is now available. All right. So it says, as you can see, you start with the same web application template we've done for a web forms application. The difference is that the new ASP.NET project dialog box, we choose MVC. When you start an MVC app, the recommendation is that you do add unit tests. Even if you don't know what unit tests are, later on, if you want to do testing, this is going to provide a folder and some templates, and it'll give you a way to get started. Okay? Remember, this is an introductory chapter, so we're not going to talk about unit testing. All right? But it's something you'll want to come back to. It says when you're ready, the MSDN documentation contains several tutorials about creating unit tests for ASP.NET MVC applications and is a good overall reference. So I'm just going to click, with this highlighted, I'm going to click OK. Is there anything else I should be doing here? All right, we're just going to say OK. I can always get rid of it if I don't need it. It says configure these Azure settings. I don't want to even do those. Azure is basically Microsoft's cloud-based kind of initiative where you're able to do things. What I want you to see over here in our Solution Explorer are the different folders that get set up for us automatically when we create this type of project. Some of this you've already seen. So this is what we get out of the box. All right, it says, congratulations, you've created your project. Notice they've even got hyperlinks over here. But what I want to show you is if you look, again, we don't have a database, so there's nothing in app data. But we have the app start. We have our content. Notice we get bootstrapped by default. We've got our controllers that we've started, but we can add more. So if I want to add a new controller, all I do is right mouse click, choose add controller. And boom, I can come in and add one. We'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. If I want a new model, right mouse click, add. All right. And here I'll have to add new item, but one of the things that is going to be in there is going to be a model. Okay. And I can add a new view in the same way. So again, we still have our controllers. We still have our models, our scripts, which have all of our JavaScript and jQuery information, and our views. And notice that since we said tests, we've got this MVC test stuff set up. Okay? It's not much, but it's a start. So it's recommended that you do that. I believe, now I could be wrong here, but I believe we can run this, but I don't think it's going to do a whole heck of a lot. Now, in our textbook on pages 872 and 873, there it is. That looks pretty darn familiar to you. All right. Got our home page. Our about page is still there, our contact page. We can still register. I believe that that'll still work. All right, and log in. Maybe those aren't, yep, there's the login. And there's the register. Okay? So that looks pretty familiar to you. You can see the bootstrap, all right, with our Jumbotron here, etc. All right, so I want to quickly go over figure 25-4 on pages 872 and 873. We've already started to go over this, but what they mention on there are, again, the initial folders and files for a new MVC application. Now, this can seem a little bit daunting when you see this stuff, but most of the work that you do will be inside of files that are either in the models or in the views or in the controllers folder. All right? And since an MVC app is broken down into these components, that's why we've got separate folders. All right? Now, there's a global ASAX file that contains the application start code that MVC requires, the app start folder that we've already looked at that's got the application start code calls, And unless you need to do something special with that, you'll probably never jack with it. There are other files that are in there. There are some configuration files that are already set up. Again, typically you won't need to do much work with those. So this table shows some of the folders and files in detail. As mentioned, you'll spend most of your time working in the models, controllers, and views folders. All right. If you want to add extra style sheet information, okay, you go into the content folder. If you wanted to add extra JavaScript, you'd put it in the scripts folder, etc. Now, one last thing to note here about the model, views, and controllers folders is that they contain several files and even some subfolders by default. The MVC template has a fully functional authentication system. You just saw that. So the account and manage folders in the views folder and the account and manage controllers in the controllers folder and the account and manage view models and the identity model that are in the models folder, they contain the HTML and the code to be able to do the login and to be able to register and log in. The scripts and contents folders are used by Bootstrap. The MVC template adds Bootstrap by default. The script folder holds some JavaScript files such as Modernizer, which detects if older browsers are trying to use HTML5 components, it allows them to do so. And also respond.js, which enables responsive web design in browsers that don't support media queries. The MVC template uses what's called a bundling framework to add scripts and style sheets to an application. This framework then bundles the files together and it serves them to the browser as one big file. The bundle config file that's in the ASPS, the app start folder contains the instructions on how this is done. And again, as you go on, you can add information to any of these files and add additional files as the need arises. All right? So again, here's some of the files and folders that are created by default. Again, app data will typically hold your database. App start is what's the code that's called on startup. Content for style sheet and your images go in there. Controllers for your controller files, models for your model files, views for your view files, scripts for your JavaScript jQuery files, global.asax for your application level event handlers, startup.cs, as it says, it's the C# class file that calls configuration code for the authentication system at startup, and config, which has all your different NuGet package and your application information. All right. Before we go on to page 874 of the Razor View and Engine and Syntax, I'm going to stop right here and pick it up in the next video.